Hi, and welcome to the NVR Podcast, number 11. I'm Rachael Aylmer.
And I'm Peter Jakob.
And today we're talking about sit-ins. Peter, could you start explaining perhaps what a sit-in is? That'd be helpful.
Okay. I guess the sit-in is kind of, the signature method, as it were, of NVR. It is a method that parents or caregivers or teachers can use to raise their presence with a young person who repeatedly behaves in a way that is very destructive or harmful to others or self-destructive. Essentially, two adults go to the young person, usually in their room. They sit down in order to signal that they don't want to be threatening. That's why it's important to sit down. And they say why they're there. So, for example, you hit your mother yesterday, and that's pretty serious. And we're concerned that can't happen. So this is an opportunity for you to think about what you're going to do next time you feel angry so that you can control yourself or your impulses and don't end up hurting anyone. And we'll just sit here and wait. And then if the young person comes up with a solution, there can be a short dialogue around that. And then the parents would thank, or caregivers would thank the child or the adolescent, and say, we'll try that out, and leave, if they feel it's sincere, that the young person really means it, not if they feel the young person just wants to get them off their back. Otherwise, they sit for a length of time that they've agreed beforehand, and then, if there's no solution, they say, something like, well, we don't have a solution yet, and leave the room as well. And they don't say, oh, we'll be back because you didn't come up with a solution or anything. Because it could be that the young person provides a solution simply by behaving differently next time when they're angry or upset. And that's good. We don't need the young person to actually verbally offer the solution. So that's pretty much what a sit-in looks like.
Yeah. I was just thinking about some other questions that follow on from that. We talked about preparing for this discussion. How do we know when a sit-in is going to be needed, and whether to do one or not?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know what you think about it. I can just share my view.
Go on, you share yours, and then I'll share mine.
Okay. I guess, first of all, the sit-in is more formal than other things, yet in a sense, it's just an elaborate version of what parents always do or have done through the centuries. Your kid has done something wrong, you go into their room, you sit down, you tell them they've done something wrong, and it's about the fact that many of the parents or carers that we work with seem to have lost that sense that they can do that sort of thing, that they can make their presence felt to the child. But yes, it is a little more formal. So it needs to be proportionate to what happened. So if, for example, a child had said, oh, shut up, and the parent wanted to do a sit-in because the child said, oh, shut up, I would probably advise against that, because I would think that's not proportionate. And if you respond in ways that are not proportionate, you're actually escalating. So that, to me, would be a reason not to do it. I would also think it's not about getting the child to agree to what you want them to agree to. You know? Say, like I worked with one family one time who were very engaged in their church, and their teenage son didn't want to go to church. And they thought of having a sit-in because of that. And I felt that that would be unethical. Because I thought that this young man is not harming anyone if he makes the choice that he doesn't want to go to church, you know. And therefore, I advised very strongly against that. And I explained that to the parents because it would have been coercive. So I think that's another reason not to do it. If you know, a parent wants to do it just to get the child to act in a way that they approve of, they should not do it. They should only do it because of harm.
Yeah. I worked with a parent who wanted to do a sit-in because the parents didn't like the choice of the girl's boyfriend.
Yeah.
It wasn't really grounds to do a sit-in.
Yeah. I think harm is the criterion. Are you doing serious harm to someone else or to yourself? You know, that's the reason.
Yeah, I think I've sometimes used the term sit-in and sometimes used the term sit with. I like the thought, the imaginary thought of parents sitting with their child for a period of time. And we talked about what the sit-in meant to each of us. And for me, it means an opportunity for closeness, an opportunity for space, an opportunity for some silence, an opportunity to sit with, for the parent also to think about, for parents to think about their positioning and their communication, how they want to see themselves with their child in a period of time, and for their child to have an opportunity, whether they do or don't, but to have an opportunity to reflect on their own communication and their own behaviours.
Rachel, can I just ask you about that distinction between sit in or sitting in and sitting with? What is what is the spirit of sitting with to you? How does it differ?
It just feels that over the years of training, lots of different participants have come up with some curiosities about this part of the training. And there's been quite, the word sitting with has sprung up more than once. And I've explored that with different participants and their interpretation. And then when we think about protests and we think about how sit-ins have been used in different environments, in political spheres, and sometimes there's a lot of, I don't know, perhaps disruption going on around, and the people are sitting maybe, you know, in a road that they don't want to be upheavaled, and you know, there's a lot of police and lots of disruption and a lot of perhaps aggression and violence, and sitting with in a room with a person who you love and who you care about dearly, sitting with just feels more compassionate. It feels closer.
Do you know what memory comes to my mind?
Don't you tell?
Well, it's a memory from my hippie days.
Yeah.
Demonstrating against the Vietnam War. And when there were hippie girls who would give the National Guardsmen who were standing at demonstrations a flower.
Yeah.
You know? So I think, does it mean that we're saying this is not against you, and actually we're with you here?
Yeah, we're with you.
And
some of the, you know, the things, I'm not as old as you, Peter, catching up, but not quite. I've not had any. I've not actually done a political sit-in, but what I've witnessed and seen on footage is there's usually a lot of chaos going around, police and lots of people being dragged off physically, bodily by many people to remove them from. And that doesn't represent the environment in which we're asking and coaching parents to operate within. First of all, we encourage parents to form a sit-in or a sit-with when the irons are cold, when the child isn't aroused and deregulated, and when the parents are feeling strong and able and present. So to enter a room of your young person who you love, to sit down and to say really calmly, there are behaviours that we disagree with that are harmful to us, to you, to our family. We're wondering if you've got time to think about these behaviours as well and why we sit here to come up with a solution. It's so much more peaceful and connected. And I coach parents to think about their breathing, their positioning, their closeness, their eye contact, all of those nuances that really, I think for me, embody the act of sitting with a person.
So you have a lot of emphasis in the planning of a sit-in with the parent on how the parent regulates themselves and how the parent or parents position themselves so that the experience can be as connective as possible. Do you know what also strikes me as important in the sitting with in the sit-in? Which is, if we are with you, there is an emphasis on togetherness and on belonging. And I think that has an important role to play in helping the young person and everyone, I guess, but particularly the young person in their shame regulation.
Yeah.
Because an important component of overwhelming shame is the sense of not belonging, of rejection, of ejection from the family or group or community. So by sitting with, quietly, comfortably, making the right amount of eye contact, regulating the parents, regulating themselves, they are communicating very strongly, we are with you, we are together. And I think that helps the regulation of the shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of participants in training, when we're role-playing sit-ins, ask, well, what if the child wants to sit on the parent's lap, and what if the child needs touch and hugs and kisses, and what if the child needs comforting physically? What if the child's needs are that? What do the parents do? And my response is that by no means do the parents push the child off the lap or push them away from a hug or a touch, but they allow the child to get close to the parent if that is the need of the child. But if the parents can just remain united in driving that message, the message really is, we're sitting here because we are protesting against a harmful behaviour such as controlling or violence. But for that period of time that they've agreed to, that they show, the parents or caregivers can show a united front, that they're just going to sit and allow the closeness, not encourage it. After the sit-in, they can embrace and touch and squeeze and tiggle or what have you. But during the sit-in, that they hold on to the presence that they enter the room in, which is that this is part of the action, part of the necessities to raise their presence in a way to inform the child about the behaviour that they that they disagree with.
Yeah, I guess there are. I mean, everything can have very different meanings, and seeking physical affection can have many different meanings. I would agree that if a child is genuinely distressed, and if it is not a common thing for them to seek the parent's physical comfort, then it's probably a good thing to comfort the child, provided the parent feels they can find it in themselves at this moment.
Mm.
I would think it's problematic if the parent did it because they felt they need to do it or should do it, but actually they don't feel it.
Yeah.
Then you get
Mm.
that kind of uh, mutuality, pretending to be connected when you're not. And
Mm.
that is also confusing for the child or young person. I guess and you've already pointed out, where the affection is about minimizing and distracting from the seriousness of the situation, then it's probably not a good idea to to go with that. So it's and I guess that's part of the preparation of the sit-in, isn't it? To sort of, well, what do you expect your child will do?
Mm.
I mean, I've often seen, I don't know what you think about that. I've often seen genuine distress at the point where the child realizes they have, at least in this moment, lost the power over the parent that they've held.
Mm.
And
Mm.
somehow that can be quite scary. I've held power over the parents. I've been able to make them do this or make them do that. And suddenly things are so different. I don't know.
Mm.
And then there can be a strong distress reaction. Do you come across that?
Yeah, I think many parents have fed back. The young person tends to respond in a way that we haven't really predicted as well. So my preparation is enabling the parents to really consider the reactions from the young person so they can plan their own responses, albeit, physical responses. And I recall some parents I worked with who were doing a sit-in because the young person had been using his mobile phone in a really harmful way. He wasn't prepared to give the phone to his parents so they can help safeguard him. And so they decided to do a sit-in and to share their message of concern around his harmful behaviours connected to the phone. And ultimately, they wanted to be able to help him negotiate ways around that. And that was part of the sit-in while they were doing it. So we prepared for everything. We prepared for the young person to throw the phone at his parents. We prepared for the young person who was going to put the phone down his trousers and say, "Come and get it." We prepared for sitting there and protesting. We prepared for violence. What we didn't prepare for was what the young person actually did. And the parents said that, we are really concerned. And, it was beautiful, beautiful message that they loved him and they were concerned about his relationship with the phone, and it was harmful to him. And there were things that they were very worried about. And that, that we need to come to a compromise about the phone. And ultimately the parents were there to help him manage that. And he said, "Are you going to sit here and do that silent stuff?" And the mum and dad nodded and said, "Yeah." And he said, "Here, take the phone."
I love that. That example has just sparked off a lot of questions in my mind and a lot of thoughts, because what struck me, the example that you gave was, this was a sit-in where the parents were protecting their son from himself. So they were protecting him from harm that he was doing to himself he was using the phone. And it sort of brought up in my mind the thing that we sometimes hear, the argument we sometimes hear, "Oh, you can't enter the child's room." Particularly we hear that sometimes regarding children who are looked after in care or children who are adopted. And the argument is because their room is their safe space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're quasi invading their safe space. So you're making them unsafe, emotionally unsafe. And I'm just wondering, what is your take on, or what is your actual experience of the children's or teenagers' responses in regard to how safe they feel?
Well, I think in many cases that those reservations come from the parents for fear of further distressing their child, and I quite, I
Or
understand.
from social workers too.
Yeah, and I understand and respect it. However, some of the feedback that parents have shared with me after a sit-in has taken place, later, a couple of days later, young people say to their caregivers or parents that they feel the opposite. Or rather than unsafe, they feel safe. They feel safer. They feel safer for that level of intensity and care, and care that is interpreted through that presence. So it tends to have the opposite effect of what the carer, or say, the person who's looking after the young person, parents, what they tend to believe or feel that will happen.
So in the days following a sit-in, parents' feedback that they see that their child seems to feel more secure than before.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't get all the feedback. I mean, one parent in particular said that her son said, I like it when you do that NVR thing.
Oh, okay. I remember recently I got a text from a parent who overheard her son talking to someone while playing an online game, and saying to the other kid, well, this is my decision. This is how I will handle it. I can't make you do it. She cracked up laughing how he was using NVR talk. I don't know how he played, but I guess there's something about that. So the theory or the hypothesis is, oh, the room is the young person's safe space. If you go into that room and they object to it, you're making them unsafe. Yet what we see is that they seem to feel safer as a result of that. And I guess something about the parent protecting the young person from themselves, to me, is an important element in their becoming safer. And I'm thinking of Chaim Omer's idea of the anchoring function of attachment. Actually, they can develop more secure attachment when they're anchored, because the parent acts protectively. Even if their harm is directed at others, they're still harming themselves by harming others. And sometimes they're predominantly harming themselves. In either situation, that the parent becomes that anchor.
Yeah. Sorry, interruption. I was thinking about in residential, some of the discussions I've had is when the caregiver or key worker is going to enter the young person's private space. In particular, a young girl. This is a key worker shared in training, that the young girl shouted out, "I'm naked." So straight away, the key workers can't enter that domain, because the young person, and of course, the key worker knows behind that door the young person isn't naked, and that was a deterrent to stop the key worker entering. And again, that amplifies her level of control around her environment, and it's how people can best overcome that.
And of course, needless to say, if we have a girl in that room, the person to carry out the sit-in should be female, or at least the person to come into the room first to make sure that the child is decent. I would imagine that a carer could just throw in a bathrobe. Here's a bathrobe.
And now you're not naked.
And now you're not naked. I'm also thinking of this idea that the room is the safe space, and of course it doesn't always match up to reality, because for example, there's a very good reason why when we work with the safe place technique with people who've been traumatized, that often we don't call it a safe place. Sometimes we call it a calmer place or something like that, because it can be associated with fear. My room is where I went when Dad was hitting Mum before I came into foster care, for example. So actually, yes, I had to run to my room, but it's still associated in my mind with hearing what's going on out there. So actually, who says that my room is my safe space? And is it not more important that safety happens in the relationship?
Yeah.
That anchoring function in the sit-in, it's so different from what I experienced earlier. The carer who's sitting there isn't angry, isn't hostile. I can tell from their body language they're not going to hit anybody. Those two people who are sitting there are getting on with each other. But also they're not scared of me, like perhaps a previous foster carer was scared of me because I was reproducing some of the violence that I experienced when I was little. They're not scared of me, and that helps me feel secure because they're strong. And someone who is strong can also protect me from dangers in life, including from dangers that I bring upon myself. And at the same time, because they're not hostile, I don't need to fear them. So I think that the safety grows in the relationship. I think there's a real danger that if we say, oh, you can't do a sit-in because that's the young person's safe place, we maybe give the message, you are a threat to the child. Rather than giving the message, you can act in a way that can help them feel anchored and therefore more secure. I don't know. That's what I've just talked a lot. Sorry.
That's what you're good at. I was wondering whether we just talk very quickly about doing a sit-in during COVID.
Yeah. I was interested in hearing some of your ideas that you mentioned before we started the podcast.
Yeah, I think COVID has brought, a wave of creative ways of working, and we've all been pushed out of our comfort zone. How do we support parents who are raising their presence and doing a sit-in during COVID, when, as a supporter, I'm not allowed to enter the home or come in the room and support the parent? And I was thinking about how I was working with a parent to utilize and create a stronger support network during COVID and what that would look like. And we encouraged and invited the support network to increase their presence by coming to the house and standing and sitting in the front garden so the child could see the family there. We utilised presence being raised by encouraging and inviting supporters to come on mobile devices in the home while dinners were being cooked, or playing cards, reading bedtime stories, and also that people could drive past in the car and the parents could sit in the garden. And I was thinking about how that could also promote supporters supporting parents with sit-ins by showing their presence in different ways, how parents can invite the supporters to show their presence in different ways whilst a sit-in is being taking place. And mobile devices, nearly everyone has them now, tablets of some kind, that you could invite a supporter to come and sit with you during a sit-in on a device. And that's still similar, still offers that symbolic gesture of a supporter being with the parents and the child during that period of time. That was just all I was thinking, really.
Some parents I'm working with did that just last week because they couldn't both carry out the sit-in. One of the parents needed to tend to the other child. And they brought a supporter in as a witness to the sit-in on an iPad. I was just thinking something, listening to you speaking about those different possibilities. And I was just thinking, presence is not just physical presence. it is how we use that physical presence, or sometimes even online presence, how we use that. And personal presence will arise from many different aspects of that communication. And part of it, I think, is communicating my determination. You feel how determined I am, whilst I'm not hostile, whilst I'm not scared. Or even if I was scared, I'm overcoming my fear. You feel how determined I am, and I am so determined, I am bringing in the supporters, and because they can't come because of COVID, I'm bringing them in online. I'm not going to let COVID get in the way of my message to you that this has got to stop. For all our sake. And I think that's important. Just before we end, I just wanted to bring in one thought at the end. And that is that of the reconciliation gesture. I usually suggest to clients to make a reconciliation gesture shortly after the sit-in, or even during the sit-in. I remember one situation a long time ago in which some neighbors who were witnesses to a sit-in brought in this teenage girl's favorite dish, which was chili con carne. And everyone was offered some chili con carne during the sit-in. However, I did advise using paper plates, because this young person was prone to using plates as flying saucers. So I think that reconciliation gesture further underlines, we're with you. We bear you no ill will as a person, So I just wanted to mention that.
And we don't want to play it at the back of our head when we leave.
We don't want to play it at the back of our head.
I shouldn't laugh. Okay. In summary, I suppose I just want to summarize something you said, Peter, that just really sits lovely with me about safety happens within the relationship. Safety happens when the relationship is growing. And that's, I don't know, when you said that, it just really struck a chord with me about how parents really put themselves in positions where it's very different, and it's the unknown, and there's some uncertainty, but there's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of patience and persistence in hope that the relationship grows, but the child senses that it's it's a safe place. It's safe to do this.
Yeah. So the safe place is no longer just geographical; it's relational. Yeah. I think that was a perfect reflection on our conversation. Why don't we just say goodbye to our listeners at this point?
We will. It's been an extra long one, 33 whole minutes.
Really? Much longer than usual.
Much longer than usual. But anyway, thank you for listening. As always, we are welcome to receiving any emails from listeners who would like to make any suggestions for future podcasts, to email us at info@partnershipprojects.com. And it's goodbye from me.
Sorry, info@partnershipprojectsuk.com.
Hey.com. Yeah, help if I know my email address. And yeah, so thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.